Hey, how you doing? Brian Cain here with the Mental Performance Mastery Podcast. And today our guest is one of the most prolific players in college basketball history. Markus Howard played college basketball at Marquette University and sits atop the historic Big East Conference as its all-time leading scorer. Over Howard's 4 years at Marquette in Milwaukee, he averaged 21.5 points per game, was named Big East Player of the Year, was a two-time All-American, and finished his career 21st all-time in the NCAA history in scoring. Howard's represented the United States of America on 2 occasions, both times bringing home the gold medal as a member of both the 2015 Under-16 and the 2016 Under-17 teams at the FIBA World Championships. Now, Howard's family tree is impressive. His older brother, Jordan, played college basketball for Central Arkansas. He was the 2018 Southland Conference Player of the Year. And in Marcus's senior year, him and Jordan, they combined to become the most prolific scoring siblings in college basketball history, passing Steph and Seth Curry. Good company. As impressive as Markus Howard is on the floor, he's equally, if not more impressive, off of it. He's the founder of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes FCA Club at Marquette, has been on mission trips to Costa Rica, and continually finds ways and actively looks for ways to give back to others, utilizing his platform as an athlete to inspire, impact, and influence in a positive way. It is an absolute privilege and an honor to welcome you to today's guest, Markus Howard. Markus, thanks for being with us, man.
Man, Brian, I don't know anybody that could give an intro like that without even stuttering or just one take, man. That was crazy. Props to you. Can't thank you enough for giving me the opportunity, man.
Well, I'm glad you could be here. And ironically, you know, I just had the chance to sit in on a call where one of your assistant coaches at Marquette, Stan Johnson, who's now the head coach at LMU, you had the chance to talk to their team. So it's like going from one to the other. And now I get to be the host, and all the notes I took during that time you were talking to LMU, I'm ready to kind of unload here and get after this. But first, you know, I think for the 3 years or so I worked with you at Marquette, I never knew why you wore number 0.
Yeah.
Could you explain to our audience, why do you wear number 0?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, for me, a number that always was, very important to me was 11. That was always my favorite number growing up. But then going to college, that wasn't available for me. So I wanted to be sure that I made a statement with the number I chose. I wanted to have a meaning more than just a number. And I was 0 in my last year of high school at Finley Prep in Las Vegas. So, when 0 was a number that was available when I got to Marquette, I wanted to make sure I had a certain meaning that was very impactful to me. And my faith is, the foundation of my life, and kind of what I, really strive to become a man in is, being a man of my faith. So 0 just stands for without God, I'm nothing. So 0 just represents, without my relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm nothing really. So, I mean, that's what 0 stands for. I've been proud to speak on that on many occasions, and, that'll always be a number that I really hold dearly close to my heart.
Markus, as impressive as you are on the floor, I'm really excited to kind of dive into some of the things maybe off the floor as well. And one of the things you did, I believe it was between your sophomore and junior season at Marquette, you took a mission trip to Costa Rica. Would you talk a little bit about that, why that was important to you?
Yeah. So especially going into college, I wanted to make sure I was making the most of my experience while being in college. So, part of that was so much more than basketball. So I wanted to be a person that was involved in the community, not only within Marquette as a whole, but the whole city of Milwaukee. And the opportunity presented itself where Marquette, and especially in Marquette athletics, was providing student athletes with the opportunity to travel abroad and do service. And in this particular situation, 15 other student athletes along with myself traveled to Guanalama, Costa Rica, and we built a multi-purpose basketball court for a village there. And, usually in this process, they have all of the equipment necessarily needed for that trip there. Like, they have the cement ready, they have the rock, they have the sand, all there and ready for you guys to kind of get to work. We didn't have that luxury. We got there was nothing there. So a whole day was taken to unload trucks full of sand, cement, rock. So when I tell you this trip was by far the most grueling physical experience I've ever had in my life, it was. We were in that hot sun. Me being an African American, I didn't know I could sunburn. Being in Arizona for 18 years, I didn't think I could sunburn. That was the first time I got sunburned. And it was literally a kind of a crazy moment for me because I was like, man, why is my nose hurt? Why is my neck hurt? And then someone was like, oh, you're peeling from being sunburned. I'm like, sunburn? I don't sunburn. But I got sunburned because it was that hot out there. So, kind of a crazy revelation that I could sunburn out in Costa Rica. But all in all, that trip was a life-changing experience for me because it gave me perspective on so many things, a village and people that have so little, but yet could appreciate so much in the little that they have. It was amazing. And for me to be able to get closer to a group of student athletes that I'm on campus with through this trip, there were relationships I'll take with me from the rest of my life. But I took so much out of that trip. I grew spiritually. I grew socially. Physically, I felt I grew just because it was really hard work. But at the same time, it was so cool to see a group of people in a village, impacted by the work that we were doing. And we were empowering people to make change. And, it was really cool because it wasn't just us as student athletes here to service a community in building a court. They did the work along with us. So for us to be able to break down barriers culturally and really learn from each other while building this court for this village, it was an unbelievable experience. One that, I'll treasure for the rest of my life. Definitely.
What were some of those major lessons that you took out of that experience that you wish you could share with other people just by talking about it, but maybe they can't experience it unless they go through it themselves? But what were some of those major lessons that have stayed with you, Marcus?
Honestly, just being grateful for the things that we do have. Because honestly, I saw so many people in this village who would live in huts and shacks and be walking around without shoes on their feet. And living in the States, we find, and I've been a victim of this, I'll complain about things that necessarily weren't as big as I thought. And, these people in Costa Rica had so much joy in the lives that they were living, and they had so little. So honestly, the perspective was such a big key to what I was doing and to what I learned and took away from that. Also too, just being a part of something bigger than yourself. I felt being away from technology, being away from the things that we value in this society that we live in, especially being in America, being in a foreign country and being able to see how they lived. I think that was something I still take with me today. So I'm sure that each and every day I'm appreciative for the little things in life. Because nowadays, especially, you never know when the next day could be your last. So you want to be sure that you're embracing the people you have with you. And just the little things in life we need to appreciate and understand that they really truly are a gift.
We're here with Markus Howard. He's a first-team All-American NCAA basketball player, Big East Conference Player of the Year. He's the all-time leading scorer at Marquette. He's the all-time leading scorer in the historic Big East Conference, 21st all-time. Marcus, with all those accolades, if there was one word that I would think of to describe you, it would probably be humility. It would be bigger than basketball. And people would always ask, other student athletes at Marquette or fans or people say, what's Markus Howard like? And I always say, I can't even really describe because as good as he is on the floor, I like to say he's even better off the floor. And you're one of the best to ever play the game. So that says a lot. Why is humility so important to you as a person, but also as a teammate?
Definitely. I think no matter where you go in sport, where you go in life, you can never accomplish anything great by yourself. I've always said this from the jump, it takes a village. For me to be able to do what I did at Marquette, it's not just me. I mean, the people in the public see Markus Howard. I see a Stan Johnson. I see a Steve Wojciechowski. I see Allison and Barb Kelleher. So many people within that program and within that community that helped shape and mold me to the person and player I am today, allowing me to have those achievements and accomplishments. So many teammates that, would sacrifice, their own self-interest, for the betterment of the team and allow me to be the player I was. So for me, I can never, ever get wrapped up in me doing something myself. Of course, it was me accomplishing things, but I wouldn't have that without other people who put themselves in a position to help me succeed. And, when I think of that, when I think of humility, the word humility, the first people I think about are my family. My two older brothers, my mom, my dad, all that they've sacrificed for me to get to where I'm at. My older brothers beating me up, beating the crap out of me when I was younger. just to give me a mentality to fight for everything, to compete with a purpose, to have a love for something like we do basketball. That's what I think of when I think of, my mentality going into anything is just, to be extremely grateful for any opportunity you're given. Even when things aren't going well, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and understand that those are going to shape you into the person that you want to become. So I always look back on the tough times because now in my life, those tough times are what have shaped me into the player and the person that I am.
I've heard you say multiple times that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, it requires a team. Would you talk a little bit about kind of that mindset?
Yeah. I think, like it says individually, like you can do some things, but if you want to experience something truly great, it has to be more than yourself. And I think as a team, coming from a team aspect, when you put that into a frame of mind is that, if we do something as a team together with one goal in mind and we're all on the same page with that goal, you're going to go far. You're going to experience some trial and tribulation, but at the end of the day, if you are all in it together, you're going to experience amazing things. And they might not even be wins necessarily. They might be relationships. They might be experiences. They might be moments that you treasure for the rest of your life. So you can go far and it has nothing to do with winning or losing. Because if I'm a firm believer that you don't lose, you learn. And that's come from just being in a place, especially with where I am in my faith. I think I learned more in defeat than in victory. And coming from a team aspect, you lose as a team, you win as a team. And nothing falls on one player. So I've learned that throughout my years in college, especially. And especially just being around a great group of guys that truly love and care about one another. I mean, I still talk to my teammates from college once or twice a week. I'll talk or text or call one or two of them every other day just to check in and see how you are. And those are the relationships that are built. Though we didn't necessarily reach our common goal of winning a national championship, I can sleep well at night and I can be extremely proud because I have those relationships. And I think that's what sport's all about, is creating relationships with people through the sport.
Marcus, one of the things you just said, I think is so good for our listeners, which are going to be a lot of coaches, a lot of executives, a lot of athletes that, are competing to try to get to a place where you are as you're about to start your professional career. One of the things you said, I think is so good and so mature is you don't lose, you learn. Where does that mindset come from?
Honestly, it comes from my faith. It's been something that's been a big part of my life. It's the foundation of everything I do. It's the foundation of my family. It has been for as long as I can remember. And, it talks about in the Bible, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope in the future. And I know that I'm going to learn. I learn from defeat. I learn from losing. And I don't even consider them losses, like I mentioned, just because there are so many things you can take away from not winning something. There's so many things I think you could take from being in adversity. Because when you win, I mean, it's all good. When you win, everyone's happy, everyone's happy-go-lucky. But there could be some things, kind of flying under the radar that you might not even notice because you win. I think those things that kind of blow up in your face happen when you lose. But when you're winning, those things, especially in a team, might be festering behind the scenes, but the winning masks that. I think being able to lose, not necessarily lose, but learning from defeat is extremely important because I think that brings out the true nature of a competitor, true nature of a team, and really shows the kind of character that people have. And I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's a good thing to lose, but I think it's not the end of the world because you can always learn from that.
Yeah, I love that mentality. If you don't lose, you learn. Conor McGregor, who's one of the best MMA fighters of all time, his book is actually called "Win or Learn." And
love Notorious.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Where winning hides a lot of cracks in the process. Winning hides a lot of cracks in the foundation. And I think that's one thing that I've heard you talk about too is being a pro before you're a pro. Right. And being a pro in honest evaluation, being a pro in identifying your process. Talk a little bit about that mentality of being a pro.
Yeah. And, you being on that call I was just on with LMU and Coach Stan Johnson, he was one of the first people to ever give me this advice. And it's been advice that's rang true ever since. And for me, I'm striving to have a career in professional basketball and hopefully praying to God that I play in the NBA. But he would always tell me, in order for you to be in a great position by the time you're a pro, don't wait until you're a professional to act like a professional. You want to always be prepared and always have your mindset in the space to where when you do get to where you want to go, it's not the first time you're seeing it. And, that's kind of a mentality I had all throughout college was I was going to do the things necessary to put myself in a position to where when I became a professional, I was going to be prepared for it, not only mentally, but physically. Of course, you're going to experience things that are new and you're going to have growing pains. But for a majority of the things you experience in terms of how you take care of your body, the preparation mentally for a game, watching film, doing extra outside of what a coach requires, that's all steps to being a pro. And those are things I learned throughout college just because when I get to that next level, I don't want it to be something that I've never seen before. But like I said, there are going to be things that you can't predict. There are going to be things that are going to be new to you. But within that growing, you don't have to waste time trying to pick yourself up mentally or physically when you put yourself in that position before you get there. So I think that's extremely important in terms of just being prepared.
We've talked a lot about how separation is in preparation. And I know one of the things that you do to prepare, for a game, there's a lot of things I want to kind of get into with your physical, relentless work ethic and the mindset and things like that. But let's talk about a topic that's current and real for everybody right now. It doesn't matter their sport, if they're an NCAA athlete, if they're a high school athlete, if they're a professional athlete, is COVID-19. And right now you've just wrapped up a historic college basketball career. The NBA draft typically is in June in a normal year. Right now you'd be in an organization getting ready to go, and they're pushed that back until I think October sometime. What is Markus Howard doing right now to keep mentally and physically prepared and continuing to advance your game? Because this might be the best shape I've ever seen you in.
Definitely. For me, I think, especially in this time, you have to always keep your eyes on the prize. I know it's something that you've heard. It could be kind of cliche, but for me, playing in the NBA and staying in the NBA has been a lifelong dream of mine. So I am not going to be forgetful. I think in this time, people can forget easily. I haven't forgot that. And I'm extremely intentional each and every day I wake up and go to work because this is my job now. So I know whenever the time does come, I will be prepared because I haven't forgot about the dream that I want to happen. I want to be an NBA player for a very long time. And I know that doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. So for me, I'm falling in love with the process all over again. And no matter how long it takes, I'm going to continue to fall in love with it because I know it will pay off in the end, no matter when it comes. If it's tomorrow, if it's a year from now, if it's a month from now, I will be ready. And I think right now you can't get tired of enjoying the process. I think people can get tired. It could be repetitive. But for me, I understand each and every day I'm getting better. There's an analogy I always loved, and it was the analogy of a cup. And each and every day you want to fill up that cup with something to put you ahead of your competition. For me, a lot of the days, filling my cup means working out multiple times a day to prepare myself, for when the time comes and playing. Filling your cup some days could be watching film. Filling your cup some days could be icing and recovering. So for me, always being in that frame of mind that I always have to be on edge because you never know when the time comes. Because like I mentioned in our last meeting was basketball and sport is kind of like the battlefield in war. It's not as intense as life or death like it is in war and in the army and military. But, I think it kind of correlates because at any point in time, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. So I'm not going to, just because we're not playing right now and it seems like we're not going to play for a long time, I'm not going to let that affect me to where I'm never going to change how I work. And it's an everyday thing. And it's something that I've developed over time, but it's something that I've fallen in love with. There's no better feeling than waking up in the morning and first thing you do is go straight to the gym. Or first thing you do in the morning is work out. I mean, there's no better feeling to me personally. So during this time, I'm just continuing to fall in love with the process. People always ask me, it must be extremely tough for you right now not to be able to play. Of course, I would love to play, but the reality is that can't happen. So the things I can control is waking up every day, having a great attitude, giving great effort every time I step in the gym, because that's going to best prepare me for when the time does come.
Man, so much audio gold coming out there. I mean, just key mindsets that you're talking about that will hit everybody, that is relevant for everybody right now, is controlling what you can control, falling in love with the process all over again, being intentional with everything you do. And one of the things you said that I've learned is a key for myself as well is getting up and working out in the morning. I call it sweat before screens.
Yeah.
Sweat in before I get in front of a computer, before I get on my cell phone, I start getting inputs from everybody else. So, Marcus, I want to kind of dive into your process. You talked about fall in love with the process all over again. And I know, you're a Kobe Bryant fan, and his book, The Mamba Mentality, which should be assigned to every student in schools across the world. He talks about he used to wake up early to get a workout in before the team would work out in the morning because he wanted to get, 3 workouts in during a day. And he was just obsessed with that preparation and working on his game. Would you talk a little bit about I know you've read The Mamba Mentality. What's your take on that book as a basketball player?
I mean, of course, rest in peace to the great Kobe Bryant. He's done so much for not only the game of basketball, for our entire culture in terms of the meaning of work ethic. And, something I took away other than his greatness as a basketball player was the attention to detail that he paid to the game, how much he gave to the game, the things he was willing to give up for the game. Those are things I think not only in basketball, but in anything create greatness. So for me, a reason why I love to get up as early as I do to work out, a large part was due to him because, I'm going to trademark this too. I always say, while people are dreaming, I'm chasing a dream. And what that means is, while people are still sleeping, I'm going to be up early enough to work out because by the time they wake up, I'm going to be already 2 workouts in. And if I have 2 workouts in by the time you wake up, I'm ahead of you. I'm not going to necessarily give you all the ingredients and secrets to what I do in terms of preparation, but I just know that we all have 24 hours, not necessarily always guaranteed, but for the most part, we have 24 hours. What are you going to do with yours? I know that I'm going to make the most of my 24 hours earlier than maybe another person does. And if I can get any type of advantage or edge over you, I'm going to do it. I wouldn't even consider it a sacrifice. It's an investment because I know at the end of the day, it'll pay off.
Yeah. Talk about that mindset shift. I mean, I heard George St. Pierre, a UFC fighter, first say, I'm not making sacrifices, I'm making decisions. And you're saying, I'm not making a sacrifice to go to bed early, to wake up early, to train multiple times a day. That is a decision. Or you said that is a commitment. Investment. Thank you. So talk about the difference between sacrifices and investments, because I think for a lot of college athletes, a lot of amateur athletes, even pros, they think about, I'm making a sacrifice to pursue this and try to be great. I'm making a sacrifice to not party. I'm making a sacrifice to not be out late. When really that's an investment into themselves. Talk about that mindset shift of sacrifice into investment.
So sacrifices, I feel, are, to me, my definition or meaning of sacrifice is you give up something in order to get something else. For me, an investment, you don't necessarily give, or you don't give something up. You put something into a common goal. So if you invest money and you make a good investment, that's a decision like George St. Pierre said. That's a good decision. So you can invest in a good decision, which is, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to party. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do all these crazy things. You're making an investment. You're putting into a good decision in order to get a benefit from them down the road. You make an investment, you know you're going to get something in the end. It's not necessarily giving up something. It's putting something into a common goal, and you know that's going to pay off. So, I mean, I'm a firm believer in investing in my career and my future, because if I can control what I can control and I do it the right way, great things are going to come from it. It might not be right away, but that's the beauty of it. You have to be patient. And the more you're patient and the more you're willing to endure adversity or the hard times, that's when the prize is going to be so much sweeter in the end.
Yeah, it's that delayed gratification, right? Of can you put off in the moment for what you want most, and people think about, well, the NBA draft isn't until October. Marcus, maybe you oughtn't be working so hard right now because maybe you're going to be burned out come October. I mean, do you get burned out kissing a beautiful woman? Do you get burned out having a great steak? Do you get burned out doing what you love to do, man? I mean, how do you stay fresh every single day? Because I've seen on YouTube a day in the life of the Howard family, and I like to think I go pretty hard, and I got exhausted just watching that, man. I mean, what's it like for you? Because your dad played football at Indiana. He's a strength coach. Your brother, Desmond, is a strength coach. Your brother, Jordan, is still playing professional basketball. I mean, a Howard family pickup game is going to be pretty physical and exhausting, man. Tell me about a day in the life of the Howard family.
Hey, man, I know at the end of the day, if I have to line up with anybody and go to war with anybody, I'm glad I got my family because, I got some heavy hitters with me. It all starts from my mom and my dad. They're extremely hard workers. And, anything you want in life, they'd always tell us, go get it. Never expect anything. So for us, going hard, that's all we knew. That's all I've known. Being the youngest, I had to fight for everything. Nothing was ever given to me, especially from those two. And they are my biggest competition, but at the same time, they're my biggest fans. And it's like that with all three of us. And I think having a dynamic like that has been the best preparation for me because I've had to play against Jordan for 15 plus years, who's an unbelievable player, my favorite player to watch, to be around. And then I have my older brother, Desmond, who knows my game better than anybody, knows how to push me. Knows my limits in terms of where I need to be in his expectations and my expectations. So, to be able to have a family and us be in the same pursuit together, it's a blessing from God, honestly. And yeah, our workouts they're not regular. They're not. And, I would put our workups up there with anybody's without a doubt, just because I'm a firm believer and I believe in what we do as a family, but also I understand it takes special people to get up every day and do that consistently. And we never want to waste time in the gym. We're extremely intentional about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And at the base and foundation of it all is our faith. So just to have that influence so close to the heart, it's been one of the things I'm most grateful for. Just because I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that luxury.
I love how much you keep coming back to being intentional and that success doesn't happen by accident. It only happens by intention. And you look at great college basketball players and their productivity and whether it's scoring or it's assists. Statistically, you got better every single year. You never got complacent. You kept sharpening the axe. You kept wanting to create that edge for yourself to go out there and keep getting better as a player, as a leader, and that doesn't happen by accident. That only happens when you fall in love with the process and are intentional and make those investments like you're talking about. One of the things that you mentioned with the LMU team on our call before this was you mentioned how the Way of Life app you use as a way to kind of measure your process and keep you accountable. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, first I got to give a special shout out to you for putting me on that app. And it was a measly $9.99 to pay for the entire app, and it was extremely worth it just because, I've gained so many nuggets and so many things from that app. And part of the process and part of being and falling in love with the process is, I think first and foremost, you have to be completely honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily work if you're not honest. You have to be extremely realistic with who you are as a player, as a person, and you have to own up to that. You have to be accountable to yourself. And I think that Way of Life app was a great way of doing that. And for me, being able to check those boxes and they were green, each and every day, it was a great feeling. And if a box was red, I felt a certain way about it, like holding myself accountable. And that's extremely important, especially within the process, is being honest, knowing what you have to fix, and then actually going and doing it. So I think that's just a great tool to use for any athlete, for anyone in business, for just anyone in general, in order to keep themselves in check. Because I think me personally, as a human, I need a routine. And if I follow a routine and I'm doing it the way I'm supposed to be doing it, I think it's going to lead to successful things. And the Way of Life app is an extremely vital tool for anyone, I feel like.
What are some of those key things that you feel like you've been measuring in your way of life that have really kind of given you an edge, like those most important things that are on there, maybe two or three?
Yeah. I know for one, definitely continue to dive into my faith, as well as, being able to meditate on the daily, be in communication with people that really push me. I think, being around successful people and people who want to do great things as well as yourself, it's only going to create success for you. So just continuing to be in contact with those great people, continue to develop my faith, as well as being able to impact others. I definitely want to be able to give back and be able to be an influence to kids under me, because it's important to help raise this next generation of people around us, and I think those things keep me in check. They help me try to live the best way I can. I want to try and be the best person and player I can be, but in order for me to do that, I have to practice what I preach. So the Way of Life app does a great job of doing that, and I think those are some things that I've really been working on in my development. But also just having this time home during this whole pandemic, I think those are areas of growth that I've been able to really, really grasp for sure.
So speaking of being home during the pandemic, I know you're getting up really early to get to the gym and work out. Take us through the intentional daily routine of Markus Howard. From when does it start? So it starts the night before. What time are you averaging going to bed right now, you think?
9 p.m. Definitely. I'm very methodical, very meticulous about when I go to sleep. I'm very, very strict about doing things the right way. And sleep is one of those things. I want to be sure I'm getting a great night's sleep before the next day's activities, which include a rigorous schedule of training, recovering.
Take us through that schedule. Take us through the clock schedule of in bed at 9, up at 4, out the door at 4:30. Give us the whole schedule so that these athletes listening can say, this is what it takes to be successful.
I had the great opportunity of getting to hear the great Eric Thomas speak, a great motivational speaker. He came and talked to our team while I was at Marquette. And one of the great things that he said that I could really relate to is, I don't ever set an alarm because I don't need an alarm clock. And that was one of the things that, I've kind of always done. I would set alarms, but I would always wake up before them. So my days usually always start at about 4:30. Up every morning, 4:30. I pray before my feet touch the floor. Pray for my family. Pray for safety. Pray for just being able to conquer the day, win every day, and that's something that at Marquette we really took into account. That was our mantra as a team, was win every day. And so from 4:30 going into 5, we're at the gym, from about 5 to 8, doing basketball skill work with my brother Desmond, and then doing strength and conditioning with my father Chuck. So just a rigorous 3.5 hours of training back to back. And then after that, the day is usually for rest and recovery. My brother Jordan and I are at home together, and, we're spending a lot of time taking care of our bodies, really making sure we're resting so the next day we can be as effective as we were the day before. But also we're doing more things, to kind of put us on a competitive edge in terms from the game of basketball, watching film, watching old games, critiquing each other. I have the great luxury of being around a great basketball player, my brother, that he's been in the positions that I want to be at. And so to hear his perspective on how I play, the mistakes I make, it carries great weight. And, I take that into a large account. So that's definitely something that we do on the daily to kind of keep us sharp mentally from the game. Not being able to play as much as we'd like to. We want to still keep our mental very sharp in terms of the game and understanding ways that we can learn from mistakes that we've made. But for the most part, our days are training, recovering, and then just spending time as a family. I haven't necessarily had this time home with my family. I hadn't seen Jordan in about 10, 11 months. So this is the first time me and him have had long periods of time together. So being able to enjoy my time with my family has been very critical in terms of this point in time in this pandemic. So I've been able to really take advantage of this time, and I've been grateful for it.
So transitioning kind of now to the floor, if anyone's watched you play over the last couple of years at Marquette, they know that you're an incredible shooter. What are some of the things that you do to kind of maintain poise and concentration during a game?
Yeah, I've definitely learned this from my older brother, Jordan. He's a player that's very stoic in terms of never showing emotion and never letting his opponent see him break or let his opponent see him have any type of emotion to where they could take advantage from. So for me personally as a player, I definitely want to always take advantage of the opposition. And I think doing that is being able to have your emotions in check and to be able to, from a mental standpoint, stay engaged for the entirety of a game. I think it's extremely important. For me, no matter what's happening, good or bad, I try to keep and maintain, a positive attitude in the fact that I never want my defender or my opposition to see me sweat or see me break. So honestly, just keeping a even keel composure, not too high, not too low. I think that's extremely important for an athlete at any level. And that's something I've learned, through my brother, but also through coaching, through being very strong mentally, things I've learned from you and your ABCs that we talked about in terms of the mental preparation game. So those are all things that I take into account, especially when competing at a high level, is that you never want to show any type of weakness with your emotion. You want to always be sure that you're keeping an even keel type of attitude and even keel type of emotion from that kind of standpoint. So those are things that in a game, no matter whether I'm scoring a lot of points or whether our team's down to whether I'm not playing well, I don't want my facial expression to show any type of weakness or any type of things that the opposition could take advantage of.
And is that something that you have gotten better with, you think, as you've matured and grown, or is that something that like you've always kind of been good at and was a skill, or is that something that you've been intentional about developing?
I gotta be honest with you, it was something I wasn't really good at. When I was younger, especially, I would even say my freshman year of college, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that would get me in a lot of trouble sometimes. So I think kind of as I got older and matured, I definitely had to control my emotion. And I think this past year, my senior year, was the greatest display of that in terms of myself as a player, because I felt at total peace with my game. And things started to slow down for me to where I didn't necessarily have to show as much emotion when things weren't going good or things were going good. I think I could definitely, being in a more mature state of mind, I was able to control my emotions a lot more to where nothing would really sway me one way or another. I was going to stay in the same kind of mindset and headspace to where I was just going to try and be effective as best way I could without showing that emotion that people could definitely point out as probably a detriment of my game.
Marcus, there's so many, anywhere you'd go, right? I mean, probably at some point at Marquette, this switch got flipped, and maybe it was even your freshman year. I think we started to work together your sophomore year, and there's a lot of pressure on you. I mean, there's cameras on you. There's cameras in your dorm room during the NCAA tournament, and they're following you and watching you do your meditation practice. I mean, everywhere you go, people know who Markus Howard is. So I remember even sitting with you at a women's basketball game one time, and like grown men, like older than our parents, are coming to ask you for autographs. And I'm like, the guy can't even watch the game because people just keep coming up to him, man. It's like he's a celebrity. And how did you manage the kind of that pressure and expectation from the Marquette community on you to go out there and be the Markus Howard who's putting in 25, 26 points a game? How'd you manage all that pressure because again, when you started college, you were 17. I mean, you just turned 21 in March, I think, right? As a college graduate. So you're a freshman at 17 years old. So you're supposed to be in high school, and here you are with the University of, or Marquette University on your back.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy, especially from, a very early age. When I was 17, 18 years old, a lot of attention was drawn to me that wasn't necessarily used to. So like anything, I had to grow into that and really handle it maturely, because it definitely could have either made or break a lot of different people. So for me, I wanted to always be sure no matter what attention I got, I was directing it in the right way, in the right light. And that was, showing glory to God. Also, being able to highlight, my team, my coaches that helped put me in that position. I never wanted things to be just about me, because it wasn't. In reality, it wasn't. Yes, I was doing things, and people would say or see in articles or in videos, oh, Markus Howard did this, but it wasn't me doing it. It was people helping me do it. And I think it was important to always keep that in mind, especially when dealing with people that would see me as a polarizing figure. But I was just like anybody else. I was like any other 17 to 21-year-old in college. I struggled just like anybody else. I had hard times. I had great moments. I had terrible moments. I had made terrible mistakes. I have made good mistakes or good decisions. So I've experienced anything and everything that a kid my age in college could experience. So just having great people to lean on and depend on in those times when I wasn't necessarily having the best time, or even that pressure could have been a lot or overwhelming on me. Having the people I had around me, I think helped me really grow into that and be comfortable in my own skin, to where the point to where I was in my last year, to where nothing really affected me. Nothing that anybody said, nothing that anybody did, the way people treated me, the way people looked at me, and nothing really affected me, just because I knew the people that really cared about me and that really whose opinion I cared about. Those are the people who were behind me from the time I was there to the time I wasn't. So, I mean, that's really what kept me in a great frame of mind with all the pressure and all the expectations around me. But at the same time, I invited those expectations. I invited that pressure, because I think as a player, that forces you to play at a high level. So I think for me, yes, it could have been a lot for a lot of people. It did at some points for me, especially when I was younger. But as I got older, I embraced that. I embraced the expectations. I embraced the people who didn't believe in me and my abilities. I embraced all the things people wanted me to do. I embraced that just because, as a player, if you want to be a great player, those are the things you want. And when you get them, don't shy away from it, because when the lights are on, that's when you need to perform. And that's what I embrace truly as a player.
And pressure, and pressure is a privilege. And when you embrace the target, because you're always going to have the target on you. And if you didn't have the target on you, you would be like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, and you would find a way to create a target on yourself. That was one of the things that stuck out to me with Jordan in The Last Dance, was if he was given the MVP, he would find a way to use that as a motivation to drive him. When Karl Malone got the MVP, he would use that as a way to drive him. He could take anything. He could take this shaker and find a way to make it motivate him.
Yeah.
How do you use the mental game as a way to kind of motivate yourself and get you to continue to go do the work every single day?
For one, I've just been a person from the time I was little who just loved the work. I love to be in the gym. I love to, I just love the process of it all. It was something that basketball was my first love, to where I couldn't be without a basketball. That was just me. A large part had to do with, having two older brothers that played. But for me, kind of my motivation to continue to do what I do is, people would always say, to prove people wrong. I wouldn't necessarily say that, because people who don't know anything about basketball are going to say certain things about me. I understand and know that not everyone's going to like you. I've come to grips with that. Mentally, I understand that. Nothing I can control. I don't necessarily believe in proving people wrong. I believe in proving myself right, because I know the work that I put in. I know all the things that I've given to the game and put into the game, things I've invested in for the game. So I could care less about what other people think or expectations other people have. I use it as motivation, but at the same time, I want to prove myself right. I know a goal that I want to reach. I want to prove myself right with the work that I've done to get there. And that's always been my motivation. It's never been to please somebody or to meet their expectations. It's to meet my own. Because at the end of the day, I'm my toughest critic, but I'm my biggest fan. So that's always been a mindset of mine is, people think I prove all the doubters wrong, but no, I prove myself right.
Yeah, so good. So good. I think because when you start thinking about like prove people wrong, well, those doubters aren't even thinking about you anymore. They're consumed with themselves, right? Everybody's into WIIFM, like what's in it for me, where you're out there trying to prove yourself wrong versus or trying to prove yourself right versus trying to prove other people wrong. And, Marcus, I've been at games at Marquette where you've gone over 50 points at Providence, seen you put up, I think 5 points in the first half against Buffalo and come back and put in 40 in the second half. I've seen you literally take over games. I think you had more, I don't know what, maybe 3 50-point games this year, 2 of them back-to-back in a tournament. Just prolific scoring at its best. But like every scorer, right, there's times where you miss. There's times where you might miss 10 shots in a row. There's times where maybe you don't score what you're normally used to scoring. When that happens, how do you keep your confidence high after those misses or when you're not shooting it lights out like you normally do?
No, I can't even lie to you. That stuff's tough. It is. And a prime example was this past year, my senior year, when we went down to Orlando, and a great tournament. That Orlando Classic was a stacked tournament. You come out being in the position I was in, first 2 games, you combined for 95 points, a 40-point game against Davidson, a 51-point game against USC. I'm sorry, 91 points. My math was way off.
Good.
91 points in 2 games. So you're on high as is. For me, going into that championship game against Maryland, I could have been a little immature about how I handled it just because I went into that game thinking I was going to do the same things I did to the other teams. But it wasn't the case. Didn't have a good game at all. My worst game of the year. But in that moment, I keep my confidence high because I've learned more in that game than any game I played this past year. And I keep my confidence high because I know the work I put in. And though I might have a bump in the road, that's not going to stop me from pursuing my goal. I look at the game of basketball and I also look at the game of life as a mountain. And in any mountain, you're never going to find a mountain that's smooth all the way up. You're always going to have bumps in a mountain. You're going to have valleys in a mountain. You're going to have peaks in a mountain. So I always look at it to where even when I experience, and when I was early in my career, I didn't do a good job of this because I always felt I was supposed to play good all the time. The beauty of basketball is it's unpredictable. You're never going to always play perfect. So I had to come to grips with that. In my senior year, a game like I had against Maryland, in past, it could have maybe broken me a little bit. But I felt so strong in my faith as well as in the process of it all that, I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to move on. And though I watched that game at least 40 times from start to finish, I've learned from it and I've learned more things from that game than any game I played. I think I was better off because of it. And I think, in those situations to where I don't necessarily perform the way I'm capable of, you can't beat yourself up to the point where you're questioning your ability as a player. You have to take it on the chin. You have to be mature about it. You have to move on, but you have to learn from that. And like I said, we lost that game. I played terrible, but I learned more from that than anything. If we would have won that game, I might not even watch the film again. So I look at that game as a blessing in disguise because I've watched that game so many times. I've learned so many things in the mistakes I made to where now, if I was in the same positions, I wouldn't make those same mistakes I made.
Comes back to that winners and learners mentality that you talked about earlier, and falling in love with the process more so than falling in love with the outcome, and there's a lot of people we've had on the podcast, Rich Franklin, who was a UFC Hall of Famer, UFC world champion. One of the things he says is if you walked into his house, you wouldn't even know that he was a UFC fighter because he's got no UFC memorabilia, no pictures of him in the octagon, no championship belts. I've heard the same thing about Coach K. Obviously, we both know Wojo and the connection he had with Duke basketball. And that if you went into Coach K's house, if you didn't know he was the coach of Duke basketball, you wouldn't see any Team USA, Duke memorabilia or nothing, right? That's wild. It's like different than basketball is what you do, not who you are, is something I've heard you say a lot. Expand on that, because I think it's one thing to say when you're 55, 60 years old and you're a head coach at the tail end of your career, but you just turned 21 and you're about to start your professional career and you're already of the mindset that basketball is what you do, not who you are. Talk about that, Marcus.
I think I'm so blessed to have had my eyes open to the fact that, I understand that basketball is going to end for me at some point. I'm going to maximize everything I can each and every day to be the best basketball player I can be. But I think just being the man of faith that I am and seeing what God has done in my life, I'm so grateful to know that there's more to me than this game. But yet at the same time, this game has given me so much. It's provided unbelievable relationships, opportunities. And, I use the game to have a platform to be able to speak into those who might not have a voice. So I know that basketball is what I do and it's what I love. But at the end of the day, it's not who I am. I would rather be known as Markus Howard, the great person, rather than Markus Howard, the great basketball player, because the ball stops bouncing at some point in time. And I want to be remembered for what I was able to give to people, not necessarily what I was able to do on a court. But at the same time, with me being able to still play basketball and start a professional career, I'm going to use the game to, raise awareness for what I truly believe in. And, that's putting God first, and that's being a servant to others. So as long as I'm able to play, that's always going to be the forefront of what I do. And I think it's the beauty of sport is being able to use the sport to impact lives and change lives, that I think really bring people together. And that's something that I've realized and had the opportunity to understand from a young age. And the fact that I'm 21 years old and understanding that, I'm very fortunate because there are a lot of people that hold on to the grips of, basketball is who I am. And when I'm done, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I understand and know that, God has a plan for me to impact people using the game, but when the game's over, it's not going to be the end of me.
Yeah, and I think I see so many athletes that put that pressure on themselves that they eat, sleep, dream their sport. And although you do too, you've also understand that it's what you do, not who you are. And it can be both, right? I think a lot of athletes would say, well, if I'm not completely focused on my sport and I don't eat, sleep, breathe everything basketball, I'm not totally committed. And I always come back and say, well, if you're in it all the time, you're also going to be exhausted. And if you look at basketball is who I am, you're going to get high with the success and you're going to get hammered with the lows. And when you can separate the who and the do, it makes you a much more consistent and I think competitive performer. Marcus, you've accomplished a ton at a young age. How do you personally define success?
I think success is what you're able to leave behind. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with the sport, because you could do a lot of great things in this sport. But I think success is who you are as a person, who you are and what you have in terms of your character. And I think success is what you leave for people coming up. I think, when the time comes for me to have a family, success is the influence I'll be able to have on my kids, the influence I'll be able to have on my own family. I think that's success. Being able to impact others and give them the best opportunity to be the best version of themselves, I think is success. Not necessarily doing anything out of selfish ambition, but, creating moments, creating instances where you're an influence to other people. Because for me, I've learned a lot from great athletes who have overcame tremendous obstacles, and I think that's success, providing somebody hope for when they experience some sort of difficulty, to be able to be kind of a shining light on a moment in someone's life to where they don't think they can get out of. And I think that's success, is being able to be an influence, a positive influence for others. I think that's the meaning of success to me, just because it's more than just yourself.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Such a good perspective at such a young age. Applause for your parents, and your coaches and people that helped you to get there. But I know you've done a lot of work on that yourself, and you're a constant student, always learning. And, Marcus, as we kind of shift into the last portion of our podcast here, and a lot of our listeners obviously are into the mental performance side of things, or maybe they wouldn't be listening to my podcast, but, you've mentioned a lot of mental performance techniques throughout this. You've talked about, being at peace with your game, winners and learners, falling in love with the process. You mentioned ABCs. You mentioned having a daily routine. You talked about visualization and imagery and meditation and controlling the things that you can control, and surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you like iron sharpens iron. If you had to say to a basketball coach or a basketball player, let's say high school, college, that are listening to this, and they were to say, Marcus, tell me about just 1, 2, maybe 3 of the most important mental performance things that you do that they could do, what would those things be?
I think for one, I think it's taking the time to breathe. One of the things I've learned from you that have stuck with me to now is, if you're able to control your breathing, you're going to be able to control your actions no matter what the situation is, whether you're fatigued, whether it's chaotic. If you can control your breathing, you could control the outcome, I feel like. And so for me, being able to control your breath and your breathing in moments of chaos is extremely important. For us being basketball players and the experiences I've had playing at Marquette, there'd be a lot of games where high intensity, high pressure, lots of stress, but leaning on the fact that if I'm able to control my breathing in any situation, I'm able to control what I can control. And I think that's extremely important for anybody in a stressful situation. To be able to have something to go to as a breathing technique, as you have taught me, as you have taught so many, to take that time to really maximize the breathing, because the more you breathe and the more you control your breathing, the more your mind's going to be in tune with that moment. So I think that's extremely important. And that's been a great thing for me from the mental side. Kind of something I do physically, and I talked about with LMU on the past meeting I had with them. Physically, I wanted to do something that would always bring me back into the right frame of mind. For you, it was check in, all in. A coach or someone in authority says check in, and everyone else says all in, just to know that they're in the present moment, in that moment, right in time. So for me, like, if something was going good or bad, I didn't want to think about that moment for longer than a second or two, because a game of basketball is about a game of possessions, a game of runs. You never want to get caught up too much on one play or one moment. So for me, what I would do, anything that happened, I make a shot, I miss a shot, I have a turnover, I get a foul, I don't agree with the ref's call, anything I would do right in the instant it happened, I would snap to myself. I would snap, like literally physically snap. Like in a game, I would shoot a 3, make a 3, snap and get back on defense, because I didn't want to be caught up in that moment, because I feel if you're thinking about something from the past, you're not going to be able to be in the present moment and affect what's happening now. We talk about in the mental game always being in the now, always being in the present moment. And I think if we think too much on those past moments or past experiences, we're not going to be in the present moment, and we're not going to be able to be effective. And so for me, something I would do personally to get me locked into the moment was snap. So that was a big thing for me. And then lastly, I never knew anything about meditation. I never knew anything like that. I always thought praying was like meditation, but I think being able to meditate and have an audio that you'd give me, it's crazy because I still use that now. I still have that, linked to my Google Drive. Brian being able to talk to me through a phone, talking about what I need to do from a mental standpoint to get myself ready for the day or get myself ready for training or a game. I think it's extremely important. Taking time to meditate and be in your own thoughts and clear your mind and be at peace is extremely important. That's something that, I definitely didn't have going into college or even before that. And it's something that I've taken with me now and I'm going to take with me throughout my career because it's extremely important to take care of your mental side of the game. Because I think, honestly, at this stage, especially going into a professional career, everyone's going to be talented. But what sets people apart is their mental preparation and being able to think ahead and being able to be in the mind and head space to be effective and use their mind. And if your mind's at peace and your mind is clear, you're going to be able to be more effective than not.
Man, you so much good there. So much good. I mean, in terms of as you continue to progress, like when you went from high school to private school to Marquette now into professional ranks, every level you go up, the physical talent continues to get better. Everyone has it. So the higher you go, the less physical ability is a factor because everybody has it. It's about who can be the most consistent. It's about who can show up and have the best lifestyle at being a champion. Who's the one that can show up the most prepared? Who's the one that can show up and stay present because as the competition gets better, there's more adversity you have to deal with because everyone's a little bit faster, everyone's a little bit better. And you just shared a lot of tools that people can use, talking about the breath, talking about being able to snap and clear. And it's another episode of this podcast. We had Justin Lawler, who plays defense for the LA Rams. And we had Cortland Sutton, who was an all-pro wide receiver with the Denver Broncos. I had both of those guys like you in college when they were playing at SMU. And they both also talked about in football, clap and clear as their way to release a red light or a yellow light and get back to that next play. And the difference between football and basketball is in football, when the guy gets tackled, the whistle blows, you got like 20 seconds to get back to the line of scrimmage and get lined up. So you have a little bit more time, like a baseball player stepping out of the batter's box, bat under the arm, undoing their batting gloves. They have more time than you do as a basketball player. So your trigger or your anchor to release and get back to the next play was a snap. And is that something that you had to practice, or is that, and you kind of were like, okay, I'll try this, and it kind of started to work for you over time, or was it something that you've kind of been doing just naturally since you were a kid?
No, it definitely wasn't natural. And I think for anybody in any kind of sport, it's different. I think the pace of the game and how the game's played definitely plays a factor to how you utilize physical cues for snapping back into it. For me, basketball is so quick and so fast paced that snapping just worked. For football players, it could clap because you have more time. Baseball players, they have more of a routine when they're batting or in the outfield or things like that. So I think it differs for everybody. But for me, it was actually something I just picked up when I was working out on my own. If I would get frustrated, I would snap and I would get like pissed. And so I think for me, kind of really taking the time to be intentional with wanting to have my own kind of cue to get locked back in, because we always did check in and all in as a team, but I want something for me personally that I could kind of go to always. And snapping was just something that really resonated with me. So even when I work out and I'm, missing shots or not necessarily being as sharp as I want to, I snap and I get back in that frame of mind and it just locks me in. Okay. It's like I had about 12 cups of coffee and I'm just like zoned in. That's kind of my thing. And it's something I picked up, and it's something that wasn't natural, like I mentioned, but, as I started to practice it more, I would really, really intentionally put it into practice or working out or a game, so if I was doing extra work, and I would really use that time to practice this type of strategy to get me locked back in if I was messing up. So it was definitely something I learned, and you had a big part to do with that because I wanted to do something personally for me to keep me in a great space in terms of my mindset, but also just to keep me sharp and have an edge on the court.
And constantly get back to that present moment, and what I love how you said, whether it was I disagreed with the ref's call or I hit a big three. I mean, just because sometimes, you get into red lights or yellow lights because adversity happens, you turnover or whatever, or because you're having a lot of success, and it's just no matter what it is, flip the switch, offense, defense, in a game of transition, just constantly be where your feet are. So much goodness coming out there, Marcus. One of the other things that you talked about was meditation. And I think, you have played probably a much bigger role than you will ever know in terms of getting other athletes to try meditation. And it's something where before the NCAA tournament in 2019, I think it was CBS Sports did a quick piece about you and using meditation and kind of your belief in mental performance. Are you familiar with the clip?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I couldn't forget because we were getting ready for the game the next day. And right after dinner, they're like, we have to film you in your hotel room. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, so I had to do a piece in terms of just meditating, and it was really peaceful at that moment. But yeah, I couldn't forget that because I had a bunch of camera crew in my freaking hotel room. And
the night before the NCAA game.
Yeah. So but no, it was great because just in that moment, I was able to kind of take time in that whole chaotic atmosphere to be able to kind of collect my thoughts and be at peace. So it was great. But yeah, it was fun. It was a funny situation. Definitely.
We'll make sure we link to that video here in the notes because, I show that whenever I talk at a coach's clinic or with an athlete, with a team or doing a seminar, and I talk about the importance of meditation, I show that video because I think for a lot of people, they think that meditation is some sort of religious practice where I have to get in a robe and shave my head like a Buddhist monk and I sit down and my ohms, but it's not that, right? It's literally meditation is practice at staying present. Would you talk a little bit about how you do your meditation and when you do it and why it's beneficial for you?
Yeah, definitely. For me, I either sit in a chair or I just sit upright in my bed. I have a headboard, of course, on my bed. So I usually just have my back up against the headrest on my bed, and I'll close my eyes, make sure it's dark in the room. So I either close the blinds or turn off the light. And, I really just focus on my breathing. Being present in different parts of my body, being able to relax and not be as tense, to where I'm at total peace, and I feel it all around my body. So, it stems from being able to control the breathing, and we do the 6 to 8 technique that you taught us, and that's been something that I do, every day. Something that I feel puts me on the right track for when I'm starting my day, but also when I'm ending it. So, for me, meditation, is vital, especially in this part of my career and just, kind of being as mentally prepared as I can for a professional career. So it's extremely important and something that I really value just because the way that I was taught by you has really resonated with me just because I'm able to collect my thoughts and be at peace.
Marcus, one of my favorite pieces about working with Marquette was that all the games were on Fox Sports. I got to see you guys play all the time. And I remember you're playing against DePaul and their coach gets a technical foul. So you're shooting free throws and you step into the lane and put your hands out like you're touching your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, take us through that, man. What was that?
I'll never forget after this. You grabbed me after the game and we're just like, what was that? Like, mind you, it was a great game. We won, but that was the thing you took out of the game the most was like, what were you doing and high-fiving air?
Yeah,
and
it was awesome. I love it.
Yeah. I thought it was so
you
funny.
were doing it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I think for me, kind of playing games within a game, especially something like that, if there's a technical foul and I don't have necessarily my teammates there, I wanted to be in the frame of mind that no matter the situation, I was always going to treat it as what I'd seen before. So I treated technical free throws as though I was being by myself. I wanted to put myself in a position where if I am at the free throw line and my teammates are there, I'm constantly touching and giving high fives and feeding energy because, touching creates energy. I learned that from Steve Nash. Steve Nash and that Phoenix Suns team in 06, 07, it was documented about how many times they would slap hands or have any type of contact as a team. And that turned out to be their best season as a team. And I think a lot of that derived from just having positive energy. And a lot of that has to do with physical contact with your teammates in terms of high fives, fist bumps, chest bumps, that kind of deal. So I didn't want to change my routine for anything. And I think being in a mental state to where you're in your thoughts and you're in the present moment, I don't think any situation knocks you off your routine. So my routine was always, if I made a free throw, if I missed, I was always going to show my teammates love and touch them up or slap their hand. So even if there was nobody there, I was going to slap the air just so I stayed in that routine, stayed in that mode. And, people thought I was weird for it, but I was just like, that's just part of the game. That was part of how I prepared mentally because, when I saw it, when there were people at the foul line, that was just how I went about it.
And they might have thought it was weird. And then they looked and saw that you probably are a 90% plus career free throw shooter. And they thought, well, maybe that's the secret. Maybe I ought to do it. And the secret is there is no secret. The secret is hard work, overtime, championship lifestyle, belief in yourself, and falling in love with the process. And while other people are dreaming.
And being a good free throw shooter to where you can shoot technical free throws.
That's right. And while other people are dreaming,
yep,
you're out there chasing yours. Markus Howard, last question for you here, man. There's so much goodness coming out with this. I can't wait to go back through it and take notes. If you could remove the skull cap of everyone listening to this, whether it's college coaches or players, high school coaches or players, entrepreneurs, fans for Marquette, fans of Markus Howard, which everyone should be, because you do it the right way. If you could remove the skull cap of everyone listening to this and plant one seed inside of their brain that would germinate and take action within inside of them, what would that one seed be?
For me, I think for us as athletes and I think as people, what definitely drives us and motivates us is competition. And I think competition is what makes all great things in our world. So I think being able to compete not only with others, because obviously you can compete with or be in competition with other people, but I think honestly, the more we compete with ourselves and challenge ourselves and, create goals for ourselves and continue not only to be our toughest critics, but honestly, hold ourselves to higher standards, that's going to create success. Honestly, like if you have a coach that has high expectations for you and they want it more than you're not going to be successful. You're not. And if you want something and you want to achieve something, you have to be the one to speak it and act upon it. But it's not going to be something that happens right away. And you have to understand that it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of growth. We live in a generation where we want things right away. And the beauty is in the struggle. The beauty is in the things that aren't necessarily beautiful. And the path isn't always a pretty one. And the more that we understand and realize, in order for us as people and as athletes to be successful, we have to be the ones challenging ourselves. Not necessarily, of course, you want to always compete with others, but your toughest competition should be yourself. You should be competing with yourself each and every day because every day is a battle, mentally and physically. So if you are your toughest competition, you're going to be successful. You have people, of course, that drive you, that motivate you. But at the end of the day, end all be all, you should be your biggest motivating factor because you hold yourself to that standard.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned earlier too that it's the balance of being the biggest critic but also the biggest fan, right? And I think so many times we think it's win or it's learn, or we think it's one or the other, and it's both, right? It's always both. It's I'm going to be a great player, I'm going to be a great person. Do both, And as my mentor Ken Ravizza would always say, he'd say it's simplex. It's simple and complex at the same time, and you make it look so easy. The success on the basketball court, so it makes it look so effortless, but we know the relentless effort that goes into it. So, Markus, it's been amazing, man, to reconnect and amazing to have you on here and get you to talk about mental performance and kind of your mindset and what's helped make you successful. For our listeners who want to continue to follow your progress, I know on Twitter, it's at Markus Howard 11.
Yep.
And I know that you also have some things going with your brother or with the Howard 3. Talk about where people can engage with you and kind of follow your career.
Definitely. So like you mentioned, my Twitter is at Markus Howard 11, Instagram, Markus.Howard, Instagram for the page with my brothers and I and seeing how we operate and how we work is at the Howard 3, HOWARD 3. So, I would strongly suggest whoever's listening to this, watching this, to, comment, like, and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of great things, not only basketball wise, but motivation wise. I have great influences in my brothers and my father, being able to give these nuggets that I've learned ever since I was a little kid. So just to have that for the public to see, I think is really good. So, the ads I mentioned, be sure to check those out. And that's kind of my piece.
It's awesome. And if you're looking for some inspiration, whether you're a basketball player or a basketball coach or not, check out the Howard 3, check out the weekly workouts. I'm feeling like I need to go smash Camelback Mountain right now because I'm feeling like I got to get up closer to your level, man. So Marcus, thank you. Thank you for being with us. It's been awesome, and I would say best of luck, but I don't think luck comes into the factor when it's with you. I would say keep falling in love with the process, and the result will be the result that you get, and you will fall in love with that result because you fall in love with the process. So thanks for being with us, my friend.
Can't thank you enough, Brian. Always my man, and keep bringing the juice, my guy.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Cain Mental Performance Podcast on the Ironclad Content Network. If you liked the show, be sure to leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Brian Cain Peak. I'll see you next time.